Hey, this is Notser. We're going to do aiming, both in the main battery and torpedoes. One question that always comes up: how do you have seconds and distance to target on your screen? I go into the settings menu, and under Controls tab, you will notice a setting called Alternative Battle Interface Mode. It's off by default. You want to check it and apply. Once you apply, you will now be presented with seconds to target, distance to target, and also all that extra health information that you see constantly in pretty much all my videos at this point. You can also access this information by holding Alt, but some find that tedious. That's why they turn it on in the settings menu. Main battery aiming. How is it accomplished? Well, we're going to assume that you're using static crosshairs, and I would prefer that you use a crosshair that extends basically the entire size of the screen. I go up to 20. That's the max I can basically go. I'd say 3/4 of the static crosshairs are using this measurement system. The dynamic does not use this measurement system. The tick marks are a little bit different in distance, and they don't line up with any measurement that I've seen from the static. I would assume that dynamic is using a different measuring scale. Maybe 30 knots is the expected speed of the target, but I don't know much about the dynamic. I prefer to stay at max zoom and just get used to one crosshair, and that's what I've done. So, a couple of universal truths of the static crosshair. Firstly, it's going off of a 20 knot scale of the target. What goes 20 knots, or very nearly? U.S. battleships, low-tier U.S. battleships. So they are a great test case for the static crosshair. Also, you need to consider the size of the ship. It's calibrated around a pretty large battleship, Iowa size, very long Yamato. So when I'm firing on a Wyoming, I need to give a little bit of compensation lead for the size of the ship in order for the shell to hit center mass. Now we're about to get into a position. Oh, Notser, you have a perfect example. Yes, I know. We're about 4.89 seconds away, so basically 5, and then I give 1 extra for the size of the ship because the Wyoming is really short. We hit basically center, maybe a little bit forward, so I could give a little bit less lead. We get a citadel, we destroy a gun, hugely successful. And it's a perfect example of using 1 times 20 knots. It's a U.S. battleship, so basically if it's going in a straight line, it's 20 knots. And you're going to see one more example. I'm reloading. We're a little bit closer. We're going to apply just a little bit less of a lead. I set it up basically at 5, and we hit, again, right where we want it to. We get a citadel, and we help destroy that enemy battleship. Alright, so cruisers, firing on cruisers, they go about 30 knots in the water. So you want to try and times the seconds to the target by 1.5. Let's just say it's 7.5 seconds. So 1.5 times 7.5 would be 11.25. I lead about 12 because it's a little bit shorter than a regular long battleship. And we hit center mass. We do a ton of damage to him, and we get a citadel. You also need to consider the speed of the target. Are they going their posted top speed limit? Are they coming towards you? Are they moving away from you? If they're coming towards you, you need to depress the gun. If they're moving away from you, you need to elevate the gun. That's sort of what the oval represents. Eventually, you'll be in a scenario where they are at an angle. And here's a good example of him sort of coming towards me. So I depress the gun below the waterline, and I'm able to predict that he will be in a different position from where I shot initially. Now, it wasn't a hard prediction, but in order to hit the shell, center mass, where the target is going to be when the shell reaches him, you have to have some foresight. Alright, so this is the last cruiser example. It's the Atlanta. He's about 6.7 seconds away, so we're going to just say it's 10, and I give that amount of lead on the target, and since he was coming towards me, I depress the gun, and we hit exactly where we needed to. Here's an example of a Kirov, and he's coming directly towards me. Bow on and stern on are unique. They cover a lot less distance on your screen, but it's just as important that you understand how fast they're moving towards you, and you sort of take a oval approach. I've shown the oval before. but ovals squished, so extreme lead on left to right and much less lead on up and down. And if you notice, there's a horizontal tick mark, and usually that is supposed to be for the user to compensate for the distance to the target. So if the distance is 10 kilometers, you can set it and it will adjust the aim so you can still use the aim reticle on the target, but the gun's going to be elevated, or the artillery is going to be elevated to the appropriate elevation to actually reach the target. That's the idea, but in this game, I think it's automatically being done in the background, so the user just has to worry about hitting the target. And a great way to do that, envision an oval around the target and compensate based on elevation. If the target is moving away or coming towards you, you can depress the gun. If they're coming towards you, elevate if they're moving away. Bow on, stern on, much less lead than you would need to give a target that's moving left to right. And this oval is a great way to envision every ship. The ship is in the center of the oval, of course, and you want to try and get in front of wherever they're headed and predict that. Okay, so torpedoes, it's a lot less math and it's a lot more psychology. You have to understand the player's intent. It's going to take a little bit longer for the torpedo to reach them, so you have to understand where they're going to be in 10, 15, 20 seconds. And a lot of that comes from setting up the correct attack. Now, the indicator, for those who don't know, it's telling you the speed and direction. If they maintain that speed and direction, that's where they're going to be. But nobody ever does that, right? It's very rare at a long range that they will maintain that speed and direction. The more appropriate way to look at torpedoing a target, are they going to read the scenario as a dangerous one? AKA, do they think a destroyer is right next to them in a position to send their torpedoes? And a lot of that comes from understanding the detection for the ships that you're going after. Cruisers and battleships. Battleships have terrible detection, so it's pretty good bet that they're getting detected by cruisers and battleships on your team. And if they're getting detected by cruisers and battleships on your team, they are not going to expect a destroyer is close. And that works to your advantage. You really want to send your torpedoes when you are not detected. I cannot stress this enough. It's much more advantageous to send when not detected and have a lower chance of hitting just in general than to be visible and send it right in their face, because it's so predictable. If you're not firing your guns in a normal manner, then you're probably sending your torpedoes as a US destroyer. It's very obvious you have an extreme rate of fire. As a Japanese, you can fire your guns and have the excuse that they're on cooldown. I'm just waiting for them to come back up while you're actually sending your torpedoes. You need to think like this if you really want to increase your chances to hit your torpedoes. Now, outside of, does he understand I'm here? Oh, does he know that I'm sending as a US destroyer? Oh, a Japanese destroyer. You also need to have a general understanding of how a ship works. If it's going forward, it's not going to have a lot of reasons to slow down, right? Unless it's an obvious case, like it's about to run into an island, maybe a friendly, those sort of things. Most players will stay in motion, like a lot of things, unless acted upon, right? Now, if they're turning, they're inherently going to slow down. If they're coming out of a turn, they're inherently going to speed up. If they're speeding up, you lead ahead of the indicator. If they're slowing down, you lead behind the indicator, right? Basic stuff, but you would be surprised how much this will impact your chance to hit the target. My general rule, I use narrow spread almost 90% of the time. Only time I would use widespread is in an extremely close range. You really need a lot of overlap of torpedo hits on targets to take them out. That's just the facts, and the only way you're going to do that is narrow. Widespread is just too easy to work your way in. A good player can recognize and avoid. And even at close range, I still use narrow almost exclusively. It's pretty much, I haven't used widespread in months because I've tried to put myself in a position where narrow is the superior option. Last thing, should I send all my torpedo tubes? Depends if you can kill the target. I go into every single torpedo attack expecting less than 50% are going to hit. So for the Shimakaze, around 2.5. 2 or 3, it depends. And for the Shimakaze, that can kill a lot of ships just outright like that. But for obviously a big battleship, no, you need to send more. So I hope this helped. If you get in a scenario where you're spotted in your close range, it's really luck. Can the player play the scenario correctly with the knowledge that you were there? And you need to hide that you're sending torpedoes by using your gun cooldowns to provide you some sort of stealth ability to send. Be unpredictable. That is where a destroyer is most deadly. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned a lot from both the main battery and the torpedo sections. I will always be improving on my aiming technique. There'll probably be another aim video, but I think this covers both in pretty good detail that you could make use of it. I really appreciate all the support. I hope you enjoy this video. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you next time.